Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship. The ship was called the UES Horizon. It was a big exploration vessel from Earth. Jake looked at the screen in front of him. The screen showed another empty star system. For 3 long months, his crew had been following distress signals across space. They went from one star system to another, but they only found empty planets and dead cities. "Another ghost system, Captain," said Lisa Carter. She was the navigation officer. Her voice sounded tired and sad. "The people are all gone. The buildings are still there, but no one lives in them anymore. It's the same thing we found in all the other places." Jake nodded. He had seen this pattern many times now. Big civilizations that had lived for thousands of years were suddenly gone. Not destroyed by wars or disasters, just empty. It was like entire species had decided to leave everything behind and disappeared. Dr. Allen Roberts walked over to Jake. Allen was the ship's expert on alien life. He carried a tablet with his latest research. "Jake, I've been studying the data from 12 different star systems. Whatever made these aliens leave, it happened fast. All of them left at the same time. We're talking about thousands of light years of space." Jake felt worried. When humans first learned to travel faster than light, they expected to find space full of life. They thought they would meet many different alien species. Instead, they found only empty buildings and silent worlds. "Sir," called out Betty Walsh from her communication station, "I'm getting a weak signal from the outer edge of this system. It's not from a computer. Someone is trying to talk to us." The message took time to decode. When they finally understood the words made everyone on the bridge feel cold with fear. The message came from a planet called Kepler 442b. The signal was broken and full of static, but they could make out some words. "Stay away from here. The devourers are coming. They don't eat your body. They eat your will to live. Whole species chose to die rather than face them. We are the last ones left." Jake looked at his crew. He could see his own determination in their faces. Lisa Carter was young but brave. She had joined the mission to explore new worlds. Betty Walsh was an expert at communications. She had helped them talk to 3 different alien species already. Dr. Roberts was curious about everything. He wanted to understand how life worked on other planets. The ship's security chief, Carl Davis, came to the bridge. He was a big man who had been a soldier before joining the exploration service. "Captain, the crew is talking about this message. They're scared, but they want to know what's out there." Jake thought about what they had learned. Somewhere in space, there was something so terrible that entire civilizations chose to disappear rather than fight it. Advanced aliens with technology humans could barely understand had run away from this threat. "What do you think, Alan?" Jake asked the doctor. "Your opinion as a scientist?" Alan looked at his tablet again. "The abandonment patterns are consistent across all the systems we've studied. Whatever these devourers are, they've been moving through the galaxy for a long time. They've been making entire species disappear." Amy Johnson, the ship's diplomatic officer, joined the conversation. She was trained to make first contact with alien species. "If there are survivors on Kepler 442b, they might have information we need. They might know how to fight these devourers." Jake made his decision. "Betty, send a message back to Earth. Tell them what we've found. Tell them about the empty systems and the devourers. Then set course for Kepler 442b. "Sir," Lisa said, "that planet is 3 days away at maximum speed. Are you sure we should go there?" Jake looked out at the stars. Space was vast and mostly empty. But somewhere out there, something was hunting. Something that had scared entire civilizations into hiding or death. "We came out here to find other life in the universe," Jake said to his crew. Now it looks like we might be the only ones left willing to look for answers. Humanity didn't come this far to run and hide. The crew got to work. Lisa set the navigation computer for Kepler 442b. Betty sent their report back to Earth. It would take months for the message to reach home. Dr. Roberts started studying everything they knew about the empty systems. Carl checked the ship's weapons. And defenses. As the U.E.'s Horizon jumped into hyperspace, Jake thought about what they might find. The message from Kepler 442b said they were the last survivors. But survivors of what? What could be so terrible that advanced alien civilizations would choose death over fighting? The ship flew through the darkness between stars. In 3 days, they would have their answers. Jake hoped they would be ready for what they found. Behind them, the empty star system grew smaller and disappeared. Ahead of them waited a planet of survivors and the truth about what had made the galaxy go silent. The crew of the U.E.'s Horizon was about to learn that sometimes the scariest thing in the universe is not death, but the loss of hope itself. But humans had never been good at giving up hope, even when they probably should. The planet Kepler 442b looked like a world that was dying. The U's Horizon flew into orbit around it. From space, the crew could see big cities on the surface. But something was wrong. The lights in the cities were weak and flickering. Most of the planet was dark. Captain Jake Morrison looked at the surface through the ship's cameras. He could see roads with vehicles stopped in the middle of them. Buildings were sealed shut, but not destroyed. It looked like everyone had just vanished. Overnight, prepare the landing shuttle, Jake told his crew. I'm taking a team down to the surface. Dr. Alan Roberts, Security Chief Carl Davis, and Diplomatic Officer Amy Johnson joined Jake for the mission. They landed near the place where the distress signal had come from. It was a group of buildings surrounded by high walls and defense. Systems. The aliens they met were unlike anything humans had ever seen. They were tall and thin with skin you could see through. They had 4 eyes that seemed to look at things humans couldn't see. The leader of these aliens said his name was Keeper Veltar. You came, Veltar said in a voice that sounded like music and wind. The translation device worked, but his voice was strange. We called into empty space. We didn't think anyone would. Answer. Your people are young, yes? You have not learned to be afraid yet. Dr. Roberts stepped forward. He was excited to meet a new alien species, but also worried. We're explorers from Earth. We found many empty worlds on our way here. What happened? What are these devourers? Veltar's 4 eyes became darker. They are not animals or creatures like you might think. They are something much worse. They eat hope itself. When they come to a world, they send out waves of sadness and fear. Not just normal fear, but the feeling that fighting is useless. That death is better than facing them. Amy Johnson was trained for first contact situations. She spoke carefully. But you're still here. You didn't give up. We are the last of our people who refuse to surrender, Veltar replied. His voice was full of pain. Our whole civilization had 12 billion people. They all chose to enter the Great Silence rather than face the devourers. They went into a deep sleep from which they will never wake up. They chose endless sleep. Instead of fighting, Carl Davis was a soldier. He got straight to the point. How do we fight these things? Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was bitter and sad. Fight them? Young warrior, you don't understand. The Devourers have defeated 1,000 different species. The Korathian Empire had technology that could change reality itself. They chose to destroy themselves rather than fight. The ethereal. Collective were beings made of pure thought and energy. They scattered themselves across the universe rather than face this enemy. Dr. Roberts was using his instruments to take readings. These waves of despair you mentioned Are they some kind of mental attack? More than that, Veltar explained. They reach into the center of consciousness itself. They show you that life has no meaning, that struggling is pointless. They make you understand, with perfect clarity, that you are nothing, and that you will lose no matter what you do. Captain Morrison felt cold fear run through his body, but he also felt something else. It was the same stubborn anger that had helped humans survive on Earth for thousands of years. When will they get here? They are already here, Veltar said quietly. The first parts of their attack have been testing our defenses for days. Soon, the main force will come out of the dark space between stars. When they do, you will understand why the whole galaxy chose silence instead of fighting. Suddenly, alarms started ringing throughout the compound. The alien technicians rushed to their computers. Their musical voices rose in panic. "Captain," came Betty Walsh's voice from the horizon through Jake's communication device. "We're detecting huge gravitational problems throughout the system. Something is coming out of hyperspace, something very big." Jake looked at his team, then at Veltar. "Keeper, we need to know everything you know about these devourers. Humanity didn't come this far to hide in the dark." Veltar's 4 eyes opened wide. He stared at Jake in amazement. For the first time in hundreds of years, he heard something he had almost forgotten. He heard the voice of a species that had not yet learned to give up hope. "You speak of fighting," Veltar said slowly, "but you don't understand what you're facing. The devourers don't just kill bodies. They kill the will to live. They make entire civilizations want to die." Amy Johnson was taking notes on her tablet. "How many species have they defeated?" "All of them," Veltar replied. "Every intelligent species they have encountered has either fled or chosen death. The Zephyrians, that's what we call ourselves. We have been hiding for 300 years. We thought we were the last thinking beings in the galaxy who are still awake." Carl Davis checked his weapons. "What do these devourers look like?" "They are shadows that move," Veltar said. "They exist between the spaces of normal reality. When you look at them directly, they appear as dark shapes that stretch across space. But they are not really physical. They are made of the fear and despair of all the species they have consumed." Dr. Roberts was getting more readings on his instruments. "I'm detecting changes in the space around us. Something is definitely coming." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. His crew had volunteered for this mission to explore the galaxy. Now they might be the only ones left willing to face whatever had driven everyone else into hiding. "Keeper," Jake said too. "Veltar, show us everything you know about these devourers. How they attack, how they move, anything that might help us understand them." Veltar looked at the human captain for a long moment. "You really don't understand, do you? This is not a battle that can be won with weapons or courage. This is a battle for the soul itself. And souls, once broken, cannot be repaired. But as..." Jake looked at his team. He saw something that Veltar had not seen in centuries. He saw people who were afraid but not broken. People who were scared but still ready to fight. People who had grown up on a world where life was hard and survival was never guaranteed. "Maybe," Jake said to Veltar, "you haven't met the right species yet." The first sign that the devourers had arrived was the silence. Not the normal quiet of space, but something much worse. It was the heavy feeling that nothing in the universe mattered. Every person with a thinking mind in the star system began to feel it pressing down on them. On the UE's horizon, crew members started to experience waves of fear they couldn't explain. Dr. Roberts was watching his medical instruments. "Captain," he said, his voice shaking, "I'm reading massive mental disturbances. The crew is showing signs of severe stress. Heart rates are going up, stress chemicals are flooding their systems, and several crew members are reporting nightmares while they're awake." Down on the planet, in the Zephyrian compound, Keeper Veltar was watching his monitoring equipment with growing alarm. The mental pressure is building faster than we expected. Your ship. Are your people holding together? Captain. Morrison checked his communication device. Reports were coming in from all over the horizon. Engineer Pete Williams was found hiding in a maintenance area, talking to himself about how pointless it was to fix things that would soon be destroyed. Navigator Lisa Carter had left her post and was staring out at the stars with empty eyes. But something strange was happening. While the Zephyrians were going deeper into their compound and turning on mental shields that had protected them for months, the human crew was responding differently. Yes, they were afraid, but they were also getting angry. "Sir," came a shaky but determined voice from Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kate Sullivan. "Whatever is affecting the crew, it's not breaking them. It's making them mad." Security Chief Carl Davis, who had stayed on the planet, was seeing the same thing. "Captain, I've never seen anything like this. The terror these things are sending out, it's real. It's affecting us, but instead of making us want to give up, it's making us want to fight back." The Devourers began to show themselves as the mental pressure reached dangerous levels. They were not physical beings in any normal sense. Instead, they were dark shadows that seemed to exist in the spaces between thoughts. When you looked at them directly, they appeared as huge moving masses of living darkness that stretched across space like jellyfish made of pure nightmare. Veltar couldn't believe what he was seeing. "How are you still working? The mental attack should have broken your will by now. Every other species we've seen either ran away or chose the great silence within hours of first contact." Amy Johnson, the diplomatic officer, was analyzing the situation with surprising clarity, despite the waves of dread washing over her. "I think I understand what's happening. These entities are used to species that can be overwhelmed by the fear of meaninglessness. But humans, we've been dealing with the fear that life has no meaning our entire history." Dr. Roberts nodded, his scientific mind working through the problem. "We're a species that evolved knowing we were going to die, knowing the universe didn't care about us. We've built our entire civilization on the idea that existence is difficult and often meaningless. This isn't showing us anything we haven't already lived with." The Devourer's attack got stronger. The mental waves now carried specific messages, visions of Earth being destroyed, images of how small and unimportant humanity was in the universe, the uselessness of fighting against forces beyond understanding. But on the UES horizon, something that had never happened before was taking place. Engineer Pete Williams climbed out of his hiding place, wiped his face, and got back to work. "You know what?" he said to his assistant. "I've been fixing things that were going to break eventually my whole life. What's the difference?" Navigator Lisa Carter returned to her post, her hands steady on the controls. "Captain, I've got targeting solutions on the main enemy. They want to show us we're nothing special? Fine. Let's show them what nothing special looks like when it's properly motivated." From all over the ship, similar reports came in. The crew was scared, terrified, even, but they were also working, fighting, getting ready for battle against entities that had convinced entire galactic civilizations to choose death over fighting. Captain Morrison felt the crushing weight of cosmic horror pressing down on him. He saw visions of humanity's certain defeat, but instead of despair, he felt something else rising in his chest. It was the same stubborn defiance that had driven his species from caves to starships. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced to the whole ship. "We're facing something that scared the entire galaxy into hiding. They're trying to convince us that we're too small, too weak, too unimportant to matter. Well, they've obviously never met a human being who's been told they can't do something." Veltar watched in amazement as the humans not only resisted the Devourer's mental attack, but began to actively fight back. "Impossible," he whispered. "You should be broken by now. Every species breaks." Morrison looked at the alien with a grim smile. "Keeper, you said these things eat hope itself. But the thing is, humanity never really had much hope to begin with. We've always known the universe was trying to kill us. We just decided to be stubborn about it." The Devourers, sensing resistance where they had expected easy victory, began to manifest more aggressively. The dark entities descended toward the planet like living storms. Their forms shifted between dimensions, existing partly in normal space and partly in the realm of pure consciousness. But instead of the usual pattern of civilizations collapsing under the weight of existential terror, something new was happening. The human crew was not just surviving the attack, they were preparing to fight back. "Weapons systems online," announced Lisa Carter from the horizon. "Ready to show these things what happens when you pick on the wrong species." Dr. Roberts had connected his instruments to the ship's main computers. "I'm reading something incredible. The Devourer's energy field is becoming unstable. They're not just feeding on fear, they need it to exist. Without enough despair energy, they can't maintain their hold on our dimension." The battle that would change the galaxy forever was about to begin. And for the first time in eons, the outcome was not certain. What happened next was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. As the Devourer's mental attack reached its strongest point, sending waves of terror that had broken civilizations across 1,000 worlds, the human crew of the UE's Horizon did something that had never been done before. They got to work. "Engineering report," Captain Morrison called out. His voice was steady, despite the cosmic horror pressing against his mind. "Engines at full power, sir," came Pete Williams' voice. He sounded tired but determined. "I've got the quantum drives running hot enough to melt steel. If we're going down, we're going down fighting." The Devourers, sensing resistance where they had expected surrender, began to appear more aggressively. The dark entities moved toward the planet like living storms. Their forms shifted between dimensions, existing partly in normal space and partly in the world of pure consciousness. Dr. Roberts, working frantically at his instruments, made an important discovery. "Captain, I'm reading something interesting. These entities aren't just mental projections. They exist in a state of quantum superposition, drawing energy from the fear and despair of thinking beings. But there's something else. They're actually vulnerable to certain types of directed energy." Amy Johnson was working with the Zephyrians, who were watching the human response with growing amazement. "Keeper Vel-Tar, your people have been studying these entities for months. What weapons have you tried?" Vel-Tar's 4 eyes were wide with disbelief. "Weapons? We tried normal weapons, quantum disruptors, reality-shaping technology. Nothing worked. The Devourers simply absorbed the energy and grew stronger." "But did you try firing on them while feeling angry rather than afraid?" Security Chief Carl Davis asked, his hand on his weapon. The question seemed to confuse Vel-Tar. "Angry? Why would anyone feel anger when facing certain defeat?" Dr. Roberts was getting excited, his scientific mind racing through possibilities. "That's it. The mental field they create is designed to cause despair and hopelessness. But human brain chemistry is different. When we're threatened, we don't just feel fear, we feel rage. And rage is incompatible with despair." Captain Morrison was beginning to understand. They're energy vampires, feeding on negative emotions. But anger isn't the same as fear. It's an active emotion, not a passive one. On the ship's weapon systems, Navigator Lisa Carter was running calculations. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the Devourer's main body. But there's something else, fluctuations in their quantum field whenever our targeting systems lock onto them. It's like they're surprised. The answer came from an unexpected source. Communications Officer Betty Walsh, who had been monitoring broadcasts from across the galaxy, suddenly spoke up. "Sir, I'm receiving transmissions from dead systems." "They're not dead. They're hiding. Species across dozens of worlds are breaking their silence. They're watching us." The main devourer entity, a writhing mass of darkness larger than a city, descended toward the planet's surface. Its mental voice echoed across all frequencies, carrying a message of inevitable doom, the futility of resistance, the meaninglessness of existence. But instead of breaking, the human crew responded with something the devourers had never encountered before: spite. "You know what?" Engineer Pete Williams said over the comm, his voice filled with tired irritation. "I'm sick of being told I'm nothing special. I've been nothing special my whole life, and I've gotten along just fine." "Weapons systems online," announced Lisa Carter, "targeting the ugly one that thinks it's better than us." Dr. Roberts had connected his instruments to the ship's main computers. "I'm reading something incredible. The Devourer's quantum field is destabilizing. They're not just feeding on fear. They require it. Without sufficient despair energy, they can't maintain their interdimensional existence." Amy Johnson was in communication with Keeper Veltar, who was watching his instruments with growing amazement. "Your people," he said, his voice filled with wonder, "they are not just resisting. They are making the Devourers weaker." The truth was becoming clear. The Devourers were not invincible cosmic forces. They were parasites that had evolved to exploit a specific weakness, the capacity for civilized beings to be overwhelmed by existential dread. But humanity, having evolved in a hostile universe with full knowledge of their own mortality, had developed a different response to existential threats. "Target acquired," Lisa Carter announced. "Firing main weapons." The energy beams that struck the devourer entity were not more powerful than the weapons other species had used, but they were fired by beings who refused to be broken by existential terror. The effect was immediate and devastating. The devourer's form began to waver and lose coherence. Its mental voice, which had been broadcasting messages of doom, suddenly carried a note of confusion and fear. "Direct hit," reported Lisa Carter. "The entity is destabilizing. Whatever we're doing, it's working." On the planet's surface, Keeper Veltar watched in amazement as his people began to emerge from their hiding places. The crushing weight of despair that had pressed down on them for months was lifting, replaced by something they had almost forgotten: hope. "How?" Veltar asked Amy Johnson. "How are your people doing this?" Amy smiled grimly as she watched human crew members working alongside Ziphian technicians. "Because we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Humans have a saying, 'Life's not fair.' We've learned to expect the universe to be hostile and unfair. When something tries to convince us that existence is meaningless, our response is usually, 'Yeah, so what?'" The battle reached its peak when the largest devourer entity, desperate to restore its power, launched a final mental assault. The wave of pure existential dread that it broadcast was so intense that it could be felt across multiple star systems. It was a concentrated dose of cosmic horror designed to shatter the minds of any thinking beings. But instead of breaking humanity's will, it had the opposite effect. Across the UES horizon, human crew members felt the familiar weight of existential anxiety and responded with characteristic stubbornness. "Oh, for crying out loud," muttered Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kate Sullivan as she continued treating wounded crew members. "You think this is the worst day I've ever had? I've worked double shifts in emergency rooms during flu season." The Devourers were learning that humanity was not like other species, where other civilizations had sophisticated philosophies about meaning and purpose. Humans had simply accepted that life was difficult and kept going anyway. The battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. As the UE's Horizon opened fire on the Devourer entities, something that had never happened before occurred. The weapons actually worked. Not because they were more powerful or had better technology, but because they were fired by beings who refused to be broken by existential terror. Direct hit on the primary entity, reported Lisa Carter, her voice filled with fierce satisfaction. Its quantum field is destabilizing. Whatever we're doing, it's working. The Devourers, for the first time in their existence, experienced something they had never encountered, genuine resistance that grew stronger under pressure. The mental waves they broadcast, designed to crush hope and will, instead seemed to fuel human determination. Dr. Roberts was monitoring the entity's energy signatures. Captain, I'm reading massive fluctuations in their interdimensional anchors. They're not just weakening, they're losing their ability to exist in our reality. On the planet's surface, Keeper Veltar watched in amazement as his people began to emerge from their hiding places. The crushing weight of despair that had pressed down on them for months was lifting, replaced by something they had almost forgotten: hope. How? Veltar asked Amy Johnson, who was coordinating the ground defense. How are your people doing this? Amy smiled grimly as she watched human crew members working alongside Zephyrian technicians. Because we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Humans have learned to expect the universe to be hostile and unfair. When something tries to convince us that existence is meaningless, our response is usually, yeah, so what? Now let's get back to work. The battle reached its climax when the largest Devourer entity, desperate to restore its power, launched a final mental assault. The wave of pure existential dread that it broadcast was so intense that it could be felt across multiple star systems. It was a concentrated dose of cosmic horror designed to shatter the minds of any thinking beings. But instead of breaking humanity's will, it had the opposite effect. Across the UES horizon, human crew members felt the familiar weight of existential anxiety and responded with characteristic stubbornness. Oh, for crying out loud, muttered Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kate Sullivan, as she continued treating wounded crew members. You think this is the worst day I've ever had? I've worked in emergency rooms during natural disasters. Engineer Pete Williams, while rerouting power to the weapon systems, actually laughed. You know what? I've been having an existential crisis since I was a teenager. At least now I know what's causing it. The turning point came when Communications Officer Betty Walsh made a discovery that changed everything. Captain, I'm receiving responses from across the galaxy. The hiding species, they're not just watching anymore. They're waking up. The transmissions came from dozens of worlds, hundreds of species that had chosen hiding over confrontation. But seeing humanity's response to the Devourers was breaking the spell of despair that had held them for so long. A message came from the Carathian Empire, their reality-shaping technology, powering up for the first time in decades. Human vessel. This is the Carathian fleet. We have been sleeping, but we are awake now. Please send us your defensive patterns. Another signal from the ethereal collective, beings of pure thought who had scattered themselves across space. We observe courage where we expected defeat. We gather ourselves once more. The Devourers, faced with awakening resistance across multiple star systems, began to retreat. Their feeding mechanisms, designed to consume the despair of broken civilizations, could not process the stubborn defiance that was spreading like wildfire through the galaxy. Captain Morrison watched as the main Devourer entity began to fade. From normal space, its form becoming transparent and weak. That's right, he said quietly. Run along. And next time you want to pick on someone, maybe don't choose the species that invented the concept of spite. Dr. Roberts was recording everything, his scientific mind already working on the implications. Captain, I don't think they're just retreating. I think they're dying. They're energy parasites, and without a constant supply of despair, they can't maintain their existence. As the last of the devourer entities faded from normal space, the galaxy began to truly awaken. Species emerged from hiding. Civilizations reactivated their cities, and for the first time in centuries, the interstellar communication networks came alive with the sounds of living worlds. Keeper Veltar approached Captain Morrison as the human crew prepared to return to their ship. Your people have done something impossible. You have shown the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for, even when victory seems impossible. Morrison looked around at his crew, exhausted, scared, but unbroken. Keeper, humanity learned a long time ago that the universe doesn't care about us. We could have let that make us despair, but instead we decided to care about each other. That's what makes the difference. The communications from across the galaxy were increasing. Species that had been silent for centuries were suddenly active again. The Trilaxian Confederation sent a message. We thank the humans for showing us that fear is not the end of hope. The quantum builders, who had dismantled their entire civilization to hide from the devourers, transmitted, we begin rebuilding. The humans have shown us that some things are worth preserving. As the UE's Horizon prepared to leave Kepler 442b, now a world coming back to life, Morrison received a message from Earth. Word of humanity's actions had spread, and the response was typically human. Half the planet was proud, the other half was complaining that they'd gotten the galaxy's attention, and now there would be paperwork. But across the galaxy, a new age was beginning. The long silence was over, and the stars were full of voices once more. The devourers had learned that there was something in the universe more powerful than fear, the stubborn refusal to surrender, even when surrender seemed reasonable. Humanity had given the galaxy something it had forgotten, the understanding that significance isn't about size or power, but about the choice to keep going when going seems impossible. And sometimes that choice is enough to light up the darkness between the stars. As the UE's Horizon jumped to hyperspace, heading home to report their findings, Captain Morrison made a final log entry. Personal note: remind headquarters that we're going to need bigger ships. Apparently, we're now the galaxy's designated too stubborn to quit species. Somehow, that seems about right. Behind them, the galaxy continued to wake up. Species that had hidden for centuries were emerging from their shelters. Civilizations that had chosen the great silence were beginning to stir. And for the first time in millennia, the stars no longer seemed so dark. The devourers had been defeated not by superior weapons or advanced technology, but by humanity's simple refusal to accept that hope was lost. In a universe full of sophisticated species with complex philosophies about meaning and purpose, it had taken a young race that had simply decided to keep going despite everything to save them all. The galaxy was learning that sometimes the best response to cosmic horror is a simple, so what? We've got work to do.